local business leaders lobby the Prime Minister to have Via Rail cars built at Thunder Bay's Alstom plant. Good evening, I'm Haley Perreault. Thank you for joining us. The Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce and CEDC want Ottawa to set Canadian content rules for a massive $3 billion Via Rail contract. They want the cars to be built at the local Alstom facility, saying it'll create hundreds of local jobs and help strengthen Canada's manufacturing sector. Jessica Clement reports.
In a joint letter to Prime Minister Mark Carney, the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce and the CEDC are pushing for Canadian content and Via Rail's upcoming $3 billion rail car procurement, and advocating for the local Alstom plant to get that contract. Chamber of Commerce President Charlotte Robinson argues this is a chance to create hundreds of local jobs and strengthen Canada's manufacturing sector instead of sending the work south of the border again.
Siemens USA got the last Via contract in 2018, so they have experience working with Via Rail. There is a possibility that Siemens USA could get the contract based just on that, which is why we are, raising our voices now as the procurement is underway.
The federal government is in the process of developing a Buy Canadian policy, which ensures that suppliers from Canada are prioritized. However, for this contract, there isn't a Buy Canadian requirement in the procurement process.
To be determined whether or not we'll be able to change that practice for that particular procurement. But the hope is that with these changes, we'll be able to more strongly support and bet on Canadian companies.
I don't think that any person who is involved in this procurement would want to stand up in front of Canadians and say, sorry, but the rules didn't tell us that we had to buy Canadian for any reason, so we're not going to right now. We understand the legislation hasn't gone through yet. We understand that those details are still working out, but that doesn't mean that Buy Canadian isn't the right thing to do to support Canada right now in the middle of this trade uncertainty.
CEDC CEO Jamie Taylor says the $3 billion contract would solidify jobs at the plant for a long time, adding that it's important for them and the Chamber of Commerce to advocate for local workers.
This contract is just, it's too much to ignore. Without it, we don't know what the future of Alstom will be. We know that they have contracts coming into the early horizon, but long term, we need to think about long term. This plant has been with us for many years, and we want to see them for many, many more into the future.
Unifor Local 1075 President Justin Roberts says things are feeling bleak at the Alstom plant right now after finishing up their latest contract. Despite that, he's feeling fairly optimistic they'll get the procurement due to the current trade uncertainty.
It's very promising to see that the government seems to be supportive of work being done in Canada, but it would be nice to see legislation that echoes what they keep saying. Since the end of the original streetcar contract, our membership's down 75%. So it would be really nice to get all of those members and then some back to work feeding their families again.
Jessica Clement, TBT News.
A Thunder Bay police officer charged with breach of trust and obstruction of justice will learn his fate next month. Staff Sergeant Michael Dimony is facing criminal charges stemming from an incident at a West Frederica Street apartment in November of 2020. 4 police officers were dispatched to help keep the peace as Dimony's then father-in-law had arranged to buy back a TV that had been stolen from his property. The TV had been posted for sale online by a user named Derek Turner, who was wanted on outstanding warrants at the time. Closing submissions were heard today at the Thunder Bay Courthouse over whether Dimony entered the apartment where Turner was found lawfully and whether edits that he made to another officer's report were justified in his actions. The 4 initial responding officers all testified during the trial that they didn't feel police had grounds to enter the apartment. The judge is scheduled to return with his decision next month. An annual report outlining the hourly income needed to meet basic household costs show that the living wage for Northern Ontario has risen almost 4% compared to last year. It's further proof that it's becoming harder and harder for people to afford the essentials. Jaden Billett has the details.
Workers in Northern Ontario now need to earn $21.10 an hour just to afford the necessities of life. That's up 80 cents over last year. But Ontario's minimum wage, now set at $17.60, is up just 40 cents. The Lakehead Social Planning Council's Bonnie Krizawati says the gap between what people make and what they need is getting tougher to bridge, particularly for Indigenous and other racialized workers who are most likely not to make a living wage.
I think if people understand that this is happening, that's part of the issue. I don't know if people really know, in the general public, that Indigenous people and racialized people are earning much less than their counterparts.
The study comes from the Ontario Living Wage Network. Communications Director Craig Pickthorne notes regional increases are up 3 to 5.3% across the province, driven mainly by housing costs, which now take up about a third of a living wage income. And interestingly, food inflation didn't play a big factor this time around.
A couple of years ago, they were spiking quite high, but not this year. So food isn't driving a lot of the costs as it was other years, and I would think that would continue into 2026. One thing the province can do is, instead of rolling back rent control, strengthen it. Like I said, rental costs are the largest slice of the living wage rate. So bring that under control, and you could actually see living wage rates not going up as much year over year.
What was really interesting to me is to see that in the north, our costs were actually quite high. In fact, our transportation costs were the highest in the region. Compared to other centres, I think we were also the highest for internet and cell phone rates. So quite alarming that in the north we are paying a lot more than, across the board other Ontarians.
For years, the Lakehead Social Planning Council has been advocating for all businesses to pay their workers a living wage. Jaden Billick, TBT News.
Local health officials want to eliminate the stigma surrounding recreational drug use. That was the focus of the Health Unit's 9th Annual Harm Reduction Conference. Workers gathered to share ideas, tools, and tactics to strengthen the support they offer to clients and the message they deliver to the broader community. Keynote speaker Scott Neufeld is an assistant community psychology professor at Brock University, and he says it's not just individual attitudes towards drug use that need to change, but society's attitude as well.
We often think about it in a more individual, one-to-one way as sort of, negative attitudes or prejudice or discrimination that somebody might experience from another person. But what I'm encouraging people to think a little bit more about is the way that negative or stigmatizing ideas about people who use drugs can often be more subtly baked into the policies or structures or even kind of environments of organizations that are, really should be set up to support the needs of people who use drugs.
It's really about sort of sticking together and understanding the work that we do is really important, and that harm reduction has a very important role in the whole spectrum of substance use health in terms of keeping people safer, keeping them alive, so that they can experience better health outcomes.
They say eliminating the stigma around drug use will take time, but with proper education, it's achievable. Ontario is mandating that all school boards in the province establish student and family support offices by next September. The Ford government contends this will provide better access to transparency for parents. CTV's Siobhan Morris has the story.
They're being called student and family support offices. The thought behind them:
give students and parents easier access to information from the school board.
Everything from how to print a report card to more complex and contentious issues. The offices will be set up first at 5 boards under supervision, using existing staff who'd been working with trustees. Other boards will have to come up with a personnel plan to stand these offices up by next September.
It's window dressing when the real problems in schools are being ignored and not addressed. Class sizes, special education, mental health.
He's just sort of throwing something at the wall and seeing what's going to stick to try to address what has now been a massive gap in the system that he's created.
Parents have complained that in supervised boards they can't get problems resolved, concerns heard. So these offices?
It would be helpful if it's with the guarantee that trustees are going to remain and furthermore, just strengthen the role that trustees have.
Political critics believe these offices prove the Minister of Education intends to eliminate elected trustees.
I haven't brought any advice to Cabinet yet, Siobhan, honestly.
The plan is to map out what's next for school boards by the end of the year. Calandra says whether trustees are part of that or not,
these offices were going to be put in place. I was really, truly flabbergasted to learn that boards just were not monitoring. The trustees themselves we're not monitoring the types of calls that they're getting.
This sideline TDSB trustee says, at his board anyway, that's just not true.
Often, superintendents and staff close the file before we feel things have been taken to the point where folks are satisfied.
Saying he was keeping tabs on hundreds of files. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
It's one of the first signs of the holiday season, those Salvation Army Christmas kettles stationed around the city. The annual campaign kicked off today in support of the organization's Journey to Life Center. Ryan Graham reports.
This is about to be a common sight at retail stores across the city as this year's Christmas Kettle campaign kicks off. The $310,000 goal is $10,000 more than last year's, but less than the $340,000 that was actually raised. Executive Director of the Salvation Army Journey to Life Center, Gary Ferguson, is optimistic for another highly successful campaign.
The money all stays here locally in Thunder Bay, and we use it for operating our center for a variety of programs. And the key thing is that it's 365 days a year that we're actually utilizing this money for. So it'll be for our soup van, it'll be for our breakfast program, it'll be for our shelter, it'll be for our Journey to Life program, various community and family services programs that we support within the community. So again, what the need is, we'll utilize that money for that.
As the Salvation Army's mascot, Shieldy, shows us, donations of any size go a long way and are easy to do by simply dropping a bit of cash in the bin or tapping your card. Red River Ward Councillor Michael Zucino knows the campaign has never been more important.
It helps a lot of people in our community in need, and it's very nice to see how many people actually step up in terms of volunteering to man kettles and people who donate. I think it's something imperative that we participate in and give as much as we can. I think their goal is achievable, and I think we need to step up and do what we can.
Anyone interested in volunteering is encouraged to contact the Journey to Life Center. Ryan Graham, TBT News.
As the cold winter approaches, a warm coat is literally a lifeline in northwestern Ontario, particularly in remote First Nation communities. That's why a Thunder Bay-based charity has teamed up with the Knights of Columbus to buy and transport tens of thousands of dollars worth of coats up north. Joey Langdon has the details.
This storage locker is filled with $40,000 worth of winter coats, collected by the Michinakus Children's Fund and bound for Northern Ontario First Nations. It's more than 12,000 coats in all, purchased in large part due to a $20,000 donation from the Knights of Columbus and their Coats for Kids program.
It's a very emotional thing to see a child suffering in the cold winter months.
The coats are bound for communities like Satchko Lake, Deer Lake, Arrowland, Poplar Hill, and Cat Lake First Nations, says Stephanie Paxton.
It's not the same as it is in Thunder Bay. The northern communities get much colder and they see much lower temperatures than we do here during the winter. And for children to not have the proper winter gear during that time, especially in a community where so much of their time is spent outside, it's a very hard thing to see.
And like I said, Michinakus does such an amazing job. It's one of those organizations that many people haven't heard of, but they do such amazing work in our northern communities. And we need to make sure that those children are taken care of.
The donation drive finished up this week. Now they have to be shipped, which is no small feat. But Paxton says it's worth it, knowing they're not just keeping kids' temperatures up, but also their spirits.
These children, so many of them have very little, and a new jacket can mean the world for their self-confidence and the success in their life. So it's a beautiful moment for us to be able to share with everyone.
It's our mission to provide for those in need, to those in their community that don't have everything they need to basically get by, and we look for opportunities to fill those needs.
Delivering these coats to the First Nations by land or by air takes time and takes money. If you'd like to donate on the Michinakus website, that is greatly appreciated to help with those logistics for the rest of the winter. Joey Langdon, TBT News.
Jackets for those in need are definitely always appreciated, and even though Thunder Bay has been lucky for this time of year temperature-wise, with those winds, a coat is still very much needed.
Yes, it started out quite calm today, but the winds definitely kicked up over the last few hours. Now, Throughout the day, we had winds from basically the west-northwest, 18 to 28 kilometers an hour, but it's just been in the last few hours we were seeing gusts up to almost 60 km. Temperature-wise, we did very, very well. We had an early morning low of -2, and temperatures warmed up to 9 Celsius, a few degrees even warmer than Environment Canada had originally predicted. And that was under a fair amount of sunshine. We were mostly to partly sunny skies throughout the day. Now, in other parts of the region, a little bit of a mixed bag at this hour, but all in all, there were plus side temperatures across the board. To the west, Fort Frances has had clear skies. They started the day at -4. They too hit a high of 9. They're currently sitting just down at 1 as the sun has gone down. Red Lake was ranging from -1 in the early morning hours to 4 Celsius just a couple of hours ago. And actually in the last hour as the sun went down, temperatures plummeted 6 degrees in just 1 hour. So they're currently sitting at -3. No wind chill to speak of, but it has been a quick drop. Kenora still on the plus side at 2, 3 in Dryden. We're around the freezing mark in Upsala and Sioux Lookout. Armstrong at -2. Greenstone topped out at 2 Celsius around noon today. They've had a lot of clouds throughout the day. At this time, they're below freezing at -1, but the wind chill is making it feel closer to -6, making this probably one of the cooler spots in the region. Along the North Shore and northeastern shores, they're still on the plus side, albeit just barely. And Sault Ste. Marie still at their high for the day, although overnight it stayed very, very mild. They actually only had a low of 5. So only warmed up a couple of degrees, but still very, very comfortable at 7. And that's under mostly cloudy skies for much of the day and several periods of brief showers. At this time, they're partly cloudy, so it's looking to be a fairly nice evening, although they are looking at potential precipitation overnight. Here in the city of Thunder Bay, we are expecting a cooler night than last night, and it is partially because of the clear skies that we are going to start the evening with. Clear skies means nothing to hold in any of that daytime heating, and it just gets cooler faster. So we'll start out with clear skies, but then increasing cloud, a low of -6, and wind chills will feel like -10, which is pretty much on the mark for this time of year. But Haley, don't expect it to get a whole lot colder over the next few days. We're still holding on to those seasonal or above seasonal temperatures, at least during the day for the next little while. However, there is the potential for a little bit of rain heading into the weekend, and I'll have more details on that later on in the news hour.
All right, thank you, Fiona.